I think it started with me really being into gaming, and like whether it's like card gaming, which is a lot of what we do here at the store. I do really enjoy board gaming. I also really enjoy other types of gaming options. So like, you have people that play Dungeons and Dragons, you have people that play other types of RPG gaming. So there's a lot of different things that can be involved there. And obviously, of course, technology, video gaming, that type of thing. So tons of different stuff. So I played Magic when I was young. I didn't play for a long time, and then I kind of got back into it a few years ago. So that's kind of what initially brought me into visiting shops, seeing this kind of stuff, and starting to think about wanting to do my own thing at some point. So the origin of Magic is actually really interesting. So at D&D like conventions and at like places where they were doing a lot of Dungeons and Dragons, there were a lot of times where there was like extended break periods. So what Wizards originally wanted was they wanted an activity for D&D players to be able to play in between campaigns or in between sessions, and Magic actually like evolved from that entirely. And then just a few years later, it didn't take long, where Magic was actually the like breadwinner of Wizards of the Coast, because it just like vastly surpassed D&D in like the amount of money it makes. Because like collectible card game is very different from only a limited amount of like dice and figures and rule books can be sold for D&D, right? So like card games are infinite. So at this point there's over 40,000 unique Magic cards printed. So there's just like a ridiculous amount of things that you can do in Magic.
Holy cow! I didn't know there was 40,000. What year are we talking when it started?
So Magic is 27 years old now. So yeah, like early 90s is when Magic first started, and cards from back then can be worth like a ton of money, which is why the collectibles market for things like trading cards is like so huge.
Right. So. Holy crap, dude. I didn't realize it was that old.
Yeah, 90, 92, 93. There's actually like a format called 93, 94, which is like the original format of Magic.
Can you still play it?
Magic is really interesting because like originally it was just, you had cards and you made a deck and you played them, and it didn't like there wasn't like set rules on like the number of cards you could have in the deck or how you had to build a deck, or so Magic back then was a wild format. It was a lot of things going on there.
Well, because it needed that time to percolate, right? To kind of develop.
And like there weren't they originally never intended for it to be a competitive card game that people played for tens of thousands of dollars. So like, when they first made Magic, it was like, this is supposed to be break time D&D activity. It wasn't supposed to be like, oh, we play Magic Grand Prix and Magic Fests for $10,000.
So isn't that crazy?
Yeah.
Like when you think about like, it started as an offshoot, killing time.
Yeah, I mean, I would consider Magic almost like an original esport. It's kind of like that.
Sure.
It's obviously without the E part. Sure. It's like one of the original things that like people didn't realize. Like, it's the same thing when people nowadays, every single game that comes out, like a lot of the games kind of like target a market for like competitive gameplay.
Right.
And that's a big deal, because if something can be an esport, that brings in a lot of money, advertisements, or things like that. So Magic, the competitive scene of Magic for the last 15 years after initially becoming something at all, like, and having like a structure and that type of thing, was really big. So
well, and that was everything was so, what I like about this story too, everything was so new to this industry at that point.
Oh yeah.
Right? There was no, like you said, like now when people come up with these ideas, there's already marketing strategies down 3 years in, and this wasn't about that. This was about, it just grew organically and naturally.
Yeah, and that's the interesting thing about a lot of great games is, nowadays it's really interesting. I see a lot of games where, we sell games specifically, like we order games from like a retail supplier, and and even then, like we have more like niche games than like say like a Walmart is going to have, or something like that, right? We're going to have some very more specific type of games, but even then we still don't try to supply like the most niche games possible because you know we don't have any idea when someone's going to come in looking for that specifically.
Sure.
But at the same time, we see so many like awesome opportunities for people who are interested in game design to do stuff like Kickstarter, to do stuff like these other options that really bring out new people or fresh ideas or stuff like that gives those people an opportunity to make games, which is really interesting because like not that long ago a couple of my friends and I, we started playing a game that came out called Gloomhaven. And I don't want to like go into like making a huge advertisement for Gloomhaven, but it was actually one of the only games I've ever like done like a really extended campaign. We played well over 100 hours of that game together, and it's like a physical sit-down campaign-based board game. That's awesome. And I had never really done that before. I'd played a few short D&D campaigns, and I'd played some other things, but that was the first time I'd really like sat down, 3 other guys, played 100 hours of board game.
That's awesome.
And
it's super fun. It's in a totally different thing.
Absolutely. And there was, and we had a lot of fun with it. Sometimes we'd, have a couple of beers and, and like enjoy the atmosphere and just like joking around and like, role playing our characters for fun or, just for kicks or whatever. And there was a lot of different things that went on with that. So, those types of things. And like, I would never have known about that or had an opportunity if like one of my friends hadn't said like, oh, I kickstarted this game. It was really awesome.
Sure.
So there's so many opportunities for people out there to do different stuff if that's something that they're really interested in. In the same way that like just being a competitive Magic player, doing a lot of trading Magic cards, doing a lot of like investing my time and effort and money and whatever into Magic, just playing the game was really what like brought me to wanting to open a store or like wanting to like think about like, I kept thinking to myself all the time, like I'm trying to make positive value on all my trades and try to like think about like investing in the future. And it's like, wouldn't that just be the same thing as like
having a store? Yeah.
So for me, that kind of like evolved. The idea at least evolved over like the course of a couple of years of playing Magic.
Wow. So you this was how many years ago too?
Well, the store. For me, I've owned it for only a few years now, maybe 4 or 5 years. Before the store was owned by me, it was owned by another gentleman who was running it as like a Magic tabletop, type of store before that. So like I inherited the store as it already was and just obviously evolved it from there. Currently we do majority Magic, some board games, some other stuff, and we, sell some other hobby activity like paints and other things, but we don't really do as much because like previously the store was like almost like 50% like war strategy gaming.
Oh, I see. They're a completely different market, really. Yeah. Within the context of this market, that's a whole subcategory of. Correct. Right.
So so there was like a lot of other things like going on with that. As far as the other stuff like that, it was mostly. He had like a wider market he was like, trying to attract as far as these other games. Whereas when I came in, we kind of moved towards some other options.
Right.
And it was also what I was most knowledgeable about.
Yeah, and that's what I was going to say. Like, this was your wheelhouse. This was your passion,
right? Really,
and you had the most depth of knowledge with this. You had the most experience. So, and naturally, when you took it over, it was war games. This was kind of peripheral to that business.
Right. And I would say, like, I would say he was doing like 50-50. Like he definitely was invested in Magic, but for us now, that's probably like 80 to 90% of what we do. It's not even because necessarily like that's what I'm most comfortable with, because I would say I'm pretty comfortable to try to like branch out and like attack other markets or do other stuff as well. And I'd love to get other types of gaming involved in the store for sure, but it's just a matter of like having the knowledge, making the investment, and doing the other stuff that would go along with each of those things. And we'd want to make sure that we have like the right, the right starting point before we like. Yeah, we're always looking at options. We're always letting people know that if they are interested in other types of gaming, and they want to get a community involved, get people that we know here playing, other games that they aren't playing yet. Like if they're board gamers or if they're Magic card, players or whatever, and people want to say like, oh, I want to really, I want to play this. Could we get other people involved or whatever? That's something that we always want to do. Building other communities or building like, different interests among even the same
Sure,
group of
within the
people.
context of that, right.
Yeah, is an important part.
You have, tonight's your tournament night, right?
Yeah, so, Magic has historically had Friday night Magic for, I want to say like almost the majority of time it's been around after it became a little more popular, from that initial starting point. And F&M, or Friday Night Magic, has been a thing for, as far as me playing Magic, forever.
Yeah.
So, it's been around for a long time. So I would say, we usually have anywhere between 16 to 30 people here playing on a Friday,
nice.
Pretty consistently. And then on the other days of the week, we have different other types of tournaments, because Magic actually involves competitive play. It involves like casual play. There's like a bunch of different types of in Magic they call it a format, but it's basically a way to play the game.
Okay.
So there's like multiplayer formats, which is what we play tonight. We play Commander, and then more competitive formats, which are like 1v1 formats.
Okay.
So it just depends on, it depends on the day, it depends on what the event is, but weekly we run Magic, 3 or 4 days a week.
Wow.
We do board gaming on different days as well. We do board gaming on Saturdays. Almost every Saturday we don't have like some other special event going on.
Right.
So there's a lot of different things that people could get involved in the store. We also, the space is here. Obviously, you can see there's plenty of space in the store. We would love to have people be interested in running their like Dungeons and Dragons campaigns here and like other stuff like that. So, we do have people that do that occasionally. We don't have any set groups consistently.
That happens.
But yeah, it definitely happens. And we even still have, once in a while, some people like would stop in and bring in like their wargaming and other stuff like that, just because they want to utilize the space and do all this stuff. So we're very happy.
Dude, it's a super inspired place.
Yeah.
And the setting couldn't be better, as I've said 1,000 times. But it's just awesome, and it just lends itself to this type of thing.
I think like when I first purchased a store, the store itself feels good. It looks great. It has that kind of atmosphere. It's like a little homey. It's a little it's like a very specific type of place.
Sure.
But at the same time, the atmosphere lends itself to like the gaming.
It just allows you to absorb yourself into it.
Absolutely. So as much as I'd love to have like a super premier location somewhere.
This is so much better.
Yeah, right. But the store does lend itself to having like the specific niche we're looking for. It's there, so.
Yeah, it's totally perfect for it. Now, if I'm a beginner, how do you accommodate that in the context of like tonight?
Sure.
So how does that work?
We have new players come in all the time. There's a lot of different ways to get involved. So if someone was like brand new to Magic, obviously there's going to be a lot to learn about the game itself, not even just about like coming to the store and playing, but just like you got to learn the rules of the game and how to play. But that's the same as like teaching someone how to play any board game for the first time. It's the same as someone starting a new game, like if they play some game on their computer or something like that. It's not any different than any of that, but obviously for Magic or for any board game or for anything that is involved in the store, there's always more of like a social aspect to it. And a lot of our guys are great. I would say like the huge majority of Magic players that we have here love helping new players. They love teaching people how to play. There's all kinds of different things that get involved with people love talking about their own deck. People love talking about their own like oh, I love doing this. This is my style. This is like what I do. People love talking about their thing, So, in Magic, there's so many different ways to play the game that so many people have like a thing, right? They have like, this is like, I'm like a combo player, or I'm like a really aggressive player, or I'm like a defensive player, or I do these things, I do that thing. So there's a lot that gets involved with, playing the game. So people love to talk about it. People love to experiment. People love to do different things involved.
So it's good for a beginner because you're going to get this wide variety of experience and styles, and then you can cobble your own.
Exactly. There's people, and people, you can find out a lot of different things about, what you enjoy, because you might like look at something and think like, that's really cool. You try it and you're like, oh, that doesn't really work for me. So like then like you can try something that's like the opposite, or you could try something that's like slightly different, or there's a lot of different things that Magic players get to experience through learning about the game.
Yeah, so that's why I asked, because I didn't know if there's like a beginner's night. We
have like a really fun thing on Monday. So we do Commander on Friday, and then we actually do casual Commander on Monday. There's no entry fee, there's no anything. People just come hang out. They like just make their own pods, they play the game. Like we don't even get involved, and usually there's like 15 people here just like hanging out and playing Magic. And so some of them help each other build decks. Some people will like lay out their whole deck on a table and be like, oh, what do you guys think? Like, you know, whatever. And like people do stuff like that. So we have like a pretty awesome group of guys that likes helping build decks even, or likes helping
That's
do
cool.
stuff like that. So.
Well, I mean, this is really at its core a communal experience.
Yeah, you know,
it's about that whole.
One of the cool things that's happened in the last few years, it's the same thing that we talked about with, you know, the idea that like malls and like those like big stores are kind of going by the wayside. Small businesses, small like more like niche type of places and like more specialized, you know, things are happening. It's the exact same thing in how in the last 20 years or so, and especially in the last 10 years, very specific, like things like D&D have kind of like come back into the fold. Like they were kind of probably like not that popular.
I do. Yeah, they weren't at all. It kind of faded. Right. I mean, it was still always present, but it really faded from public culture.
Right, and now people are just like getting way more into it. Like it's not something that like people like keep on the down low. Like oh, I play D&D. Like you don't like tell people that you play Dungeons and Dragons, or you like don't play. You don't tell people that you play Magic, right? But now it's like such a normal thing for like, you know, I see like the different types of people I see that I never would have like expected to like really love something like D&D or really love something like board gaming there's such a wide range of people that play those types of things, which is really interesting to me. So, you know, that has kind of come back into something that's more into like, I'd say popular culture, or something that's like more like, I'd say it's been normalized or like,
yeah, it has
whatever.
been normalized. Yeah.
It's like much more common. Yeah. So I would say like, just like that, you know, board gaming and not like, you know, everyone knows about Sorry and Monopoly and like those types of games, right? But like friends of mine and people I know that like play board games and purchase board games at the store, they play such different board games. Like I think in the last 3 or 4 years of like owning the store, I've played at least 50 to 60 different board games I didn't even know existed.
Holy crap!
At least, and that's not even talking about the hundreds of board games that do exist.
Well, that's in the context of your like this style, right?
Oh, absolutely.
You're talking about. So, because there was
it's such I would say it's a combination of, you know, the internet is so good, and it's both good and evil, or it's great, it's amazing, and it's also like, you know, it destroys lives and businesses and all kinds of things. So, you know, the internet is it's just omnipresent and omnipowerful, right? It's just super huge, right? And so the internet has just widened people's horizons, and there's so much information, and you can see things and like look at, like, you get a full review and all kinds of stuff, and you can see bit by bit.
It can really
bit
suck
of
you
information.
in, sure.
Yeah,
Yeah,
absolutely. So the thing that's happened, I think, is, you know, things like streaming services and people popularizing like all kinds of stuff has really brought out like those things. So it's not, I wouldn't say it's just Magic, but I would say it's like a combination of like gaming in general is like way more widely accepted, whether it's video gaming, whether it's tabletop gaming, whether it's card gaming, you know, whatever those.
Sure. Yeah, it was hard. Dude, I mean, I'm 50, so when I grew up in the 80s and you played D&D,
it's pretty nerdy.
Yeah, it was, and then on top of that, like parents got all freaked out, and it was really effed up too. You know, because you're like, really? I'm just playing a game, and it's awesome, and we loved it, but you almost had to do it. It was like liking like European death metal. Do you know what I mean? Like, you know, it was like equated with this like weird closeted.
Sure, it was like a very like closed off culture.
Yeah, and then nobody got it, you know, which made it even better for us, because you're like, that's awesome. But it's really awesome to see how this has become part of everyday mainstream. It's
the same thing as, you know, I would say if you talked about animated TV shows being cool 20 years ago, like with the exception of like very, very, very specific things like Disney films, or like I'd say like the Looney Tunes, or like something very specific like that. Like if you weren't like specifically talking about those things, and even those things though were considered like childish, right? Like very, very juvenile, very like specific to a group of people, right? But if you were an adult and you watched cartoons, or you were an adult and you watched like animated stuff, right? That was like, if you weren't watching with a kid or you weren't watching with your kid, that's
what's
weird,
wrong with you,
right?
Yeah.
Well, that's weird, man.
Yeah.
So like in that perspective nowadays, like, you know, how many like animated features, like like Japanese anime films and other things, or
Well,
whatever.
anime really helped, I think, deepen the acceptance and the creativity because
Absolutely.
there's such beautiful stories and they're so well done.
Yeah. And those kind of things are, and the thing is though, what happens is the big companies actually try to take advantage of those things becoming popularized, right? Like like companies like Netflix or Hulu or whatever, these show streaming services, right? Like they get the inkling that like, oh, animated like things are becoming more popular.
Right.
Well, okay, get these on here. Like let's
just pump them out.
Let's pump them out. Yeah, exactly. And like they get that going, and then it becomes more mainstream. It becomes more accepted, more popular. So that's kind of the same thing. So like gaming has been that way. When I was very young and like I wanted to play video games and I wanted to like do other stuff, my parents were like, "That's rotting your brain. That's like doing this other stuff, right?"
Yeah, you're just like, what are
and
you
now
talking about?
there are people who stream video games that make more money than like.
Well, it's funny as a parents. That's always the sea change when they realize that not only is this something that you're passionate about, but you can make boatloads of cash with it. Then all of a sudden it's okay.
Right. My parents were always really, really, really supportive of me on doing like different activities and different things that I wanted to do. Right. Originally, when I decided that like I wasn't going for like a career in like a specific area, and I was kind of like working a job, trying to play competitive Magic, and I was like just like kind of like floating somewhere in between of like trying to like make something of myself in either like a competitive scene or thinking about trying to like do like the job I was doing at the time, but like I really couldn't like make one decision one way or the other and really say to myself like, this is what I want to do, like this is like the specific thing. So they were always kind of telling me like you should like pick something, like make something, do something, but like whatever it is, just like do the thing.
Beeline
right?
that, right?
So they were supportive of me when I wanted to do this, even though they were pretty skeptical. Like, is this like is
that's
this
just
really
parents being parents, though.
Absolutely. It's like, to them it was like, is this really a way that you can like make a living? Like is this really like a thing? Because no matter what you think, you're always wrong if you don't know it yourself, right? If you aren't experiencing it, like either some people think it's like, oh, it must be so easy. Like I have a lot of customers occasionally who are like, oh man, like this is just the dream. You kick back and you get to play. It's
not like that at all.
And what's really funny is like the last time I played Magic was like weeks ago. Like I don't play that many games of Magic, even though I love Magic and I love seeing people play and I love having people in my store and all this stuff. But like, when was the last time I got to play a Magic? Like weeks ago, I think. And that was like one game.
It's a typical carpenter's dilemma. He's making houses
like that. People are like, oh man, like running your own game store and you're just like making money, like owning, like making games, playing games or whatever. That's not necessarily how it works. At the same time, though, I will say not just because I enjoy what I'm doing or whatever, but also just like, the difficulty of like what I'm doing and how I get to like make my own time the way that I do and do the things that I like, and like I get to like choose how I'm allocating my time. And as long as like, I can continue to do that in a way that's efficient, I can.
Yeah, then it works for you.
Yeah. So, I would say most people, I'm not trying to like be like, oh yeah, you're no one knows how hard it is or no one knows how easy it is. It's definitely not like that.
No.
It's like very specific to whatever job you're trying, or whatever business you're trying to own, whatever job you're doing. It's like how much stress or how not stressful or how all those things that get involved with that are very specific to whatever you're doing. So.
And at the end of the day, it's still a business. It doesn't, my dad used to say, he's like, it doesn't matter if we grew up in a restaurant. He's like, it doesn't matter if it's a shoe store, a restaurant, a car dealership, or a magic store. It's all the same. It's all a business. You still got to make money. You still got to run it right. And you still need your clientele. You got to make your customers happy and the people who patronize your business, And that's what people, I think, because they see you doing something that's, somebody that's working in an office and they hate their job and they go home and they're like, this sucks. I'm like exhausted all the time and I'm not fulfilled. Right. They see you, it's very inspiring. That's why, like stores like you are important to have on the show, because you're not, this whole thing is about people who are doing things that are different, because it's inspiring to see like somebody who's doing this.
And it's funny because like, that if that's true of me, if like sometimes, if people ever feel inspired by seeing me do something that I like to do, and like that's the business I chosen to get into, and even though I'm not trying, like my goal even starting out was never like, I'm gonna just make money hand over fist and I'm
Sure,
gonna like
it's
do this
about the
stuff.
balance of all of this, right?
It's about like doing something I like enough that like I don't feel like I'm constantly under pressure and I'm constantly stressed out, and like, I would never want to work a job like that, whereas some people, whether it's they work well under pressure, whether they make enough money for that pressure to be worth it for them, or any of those other things, I would never like say, oh, I would never do that because what for whatever reason, right? Everyone does what they need to do to get by, and all the way it works for each person individually is different. But for me, it was never about like I'm gonna make so much money. It was never about like the job's so easy. It was like the balance of this is something that I like, so I just really want to like delve deeper into it and like, can I do something with it, or whatever it was when I first started.
It's a good fit for you.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And I think that's what it is in the end. I mean, a lot of people could try this, and a lot of people would make it stick, and you made it stick. So now you have your tournaments throughout the week. You have a ton of cards in here too.
Sure.
You've got paints. Tell me a little bit more about the product selection that you have.
Yeah, we have a product selection that involves everything from the Magic side of the business, which involves like single cards. It involves like booster packs of cards. It involves sleeves for decks. It involves deck boxes, like all the accessories that go with Magic. So there's always those kind of things that are here and ready to go. As far as other products, we do offer board games. We offer the ability for people to like also like custom order board games too. So if there's like a specific board game you're looking for, we don't have the space or the the ability to keep absolutely everything in stock. But if you're like looking for a specific one and you're like, oh, I've been looking for this board game for the last couple of months or whatever, we do have the different ways to acquire those things from our distributors. So we can look to do that. People order board games from us like weekly, so that's pretty regular. And then on top of that, we do have like supplies for people who are interested in Dungeons and Dragons. So if you were like, I need dice, or I need like the rule books, manuals. If you were using like miniatures and like needing like paints or primer or other things like that, we provide those as well. And then on the anything else type of gaming or other things that people would do, the rest of it would just be offering up the space. So we have so much space in the store for people to show up and have a D&D campaign, to show up and just play some Magic, even if it weren't on like a day that they were here for a tournament.
Still come in and
absolutely
right.
So the space is always available for people to utilize. So
well, it's your tribe. It's your welcoming. Right, it's this environment where you're like, hey, let's go. And it's nice sometimes to go somewhere to play this instead of over at somebody's house. That's got its place, but this is just, this is like the ultimate basement.
Yeah, right. Absolutely. It offers not only like the just the vast space, a lot of like elbow room, that type of thing, but it also if you're missing something, right? It's like, oh, I need this one card. Here it is.
That's right
so
here.
it always offers the different options for people to be able to do that. So that would be like the main things we focus on currently. And if people were involved in creating like other communities, like that's what game stores are for. Like we're here so that if someone says like, I really like this game and I would love more people to play it with me, like that's why we're here, right? That's like what we do. So like if you told a couple of people that come here tonight, if you told a couple of people that come here on Monday or Tuesday, like I really like this game, like would people think about playing it with me? If you came on a Saturday when we do board games, that type of thing. So absolutely.